field and you just sit in the stands. Take that bass out your voice. If you ain't got no gun in your hand, I do what I want, and you don't even do what you can, you do what you told. I got no love for my foes that can mimic my delivery and copy my prose, but what they can't comprehend is how I stick to this code. It's either in you or not. It's not the kicks and the clothes. They ain't cut from the same cloth, can't come from the same loom, fit in similar shapes or even sit in the same room. Confusing authenticity with part of the costume. I'm teaching gifted children, you can't come in this classroom.
Dare to struggle, dare to win.
We are back. Dare to struggle, dare to win. It's been a long time. About 2, 3, 4 weeks, a month. Everybody gone somewhere. I got lost on the island. Cherie in New York stealing shit. And used to running from the cops in Detroit. I mean, we having some time. How y'all feeling, yo?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling real good. I can't complain. Just did a bike ride, so I'm still cooling down from that. So
you definitely look like you did a bike ride.
Yeah, I got that glow.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Man, so tell us about that Big Apple trip, man. Living out your dreams.
But before you do that, we want to welcome all of y'all into Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win. This is a CNB podcast that's sharing some radical Black politics according to our vantage point. Me and Cherie is in Atlanta, Yusef is in Detroit, and we're here on Black Liberation Media, where there's a ton of politicized people in the chats and who's commenting after they watch this video. Some of this content is for you, but most of it is for you to copy the link and share it with some other people who need to be more radicalized. In fact, if you know anybody who works for a nonprofit, you probably should send them this link right now and invite them to the conversation, because they're going to hear some shit that they resonate with, and they might hear some shit that make them feel some type of way. But without further ado, please answer Yusuf's question about your time in the Apple.
Well, he described it as living out a dream, and like it really was. I mean, I don't mean to sound cliche, but I mean, it's like I have two sides of the experience when it comes to performing my show, which is what Yusuf is specifically asking about. One is, doing this show with radical politics and observing responses and being able to connect with people outside of that. And then the other half is just my journey as an artist. So I guess I'll start with just kind of my personal experience. But yeah, so I performed part 2 of my show, Afro Goddess Revolutionary Love, is part 2 to the original show I wrote in 2016 called The Diary of an Afro Goddess. And I've obviously evolved so much since then. And I got to perform it at a festival for social change in New York City last month now. And yeah, it was dope. We did 6 shows: Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday matinee, and Saturday night, and then Sunday. So it was, a jam-packed couple of days. But it was dope to experience being a part of something like that. I know I had one of the most radical shows, or the most radical show in the lineup. So it was interesting to see people's response to the work I was putting out. Now, the show is like a complete hour, so it was dope to kind of see how I could keep people's attention in the storytelling and, kind of make them think about radical Black politics and stuff like that further than what they had described. So it was cool seeing people that, already are hip to some of the knowledge. I definitely had somebody come up to me afterwards. I think he knew somebody else in the festival, and he was like, because I have this whole segment on Black buying power that's kind of like a commercial. And he came up to me like, yo, I be arguing with my homeboys all the time about that shit. Because I mentioned Jared in the show. So he was like, that's from Jared Ball. I be telling people like the circulate the Black dollar is not gonna work, and they be getting mad at me. So it was dope to see you, lay that out. So, that was cool. And then also people who just, did not know anything about that way of thinking. Definitely had a mixed audience, people from all sorts of backgrounds, Black, white, Jewish. New York is notorious for like, having them older Jewish people coming out. And it was interesting because I had a lot of lines about Zionism. And so, not to, put every Jewish person is a Zionist, but it was interesting to see, maybe some people in the audience who's the politics did make them a little bit uncomfortable, but, in a theater, it's kind of an awkward space to really just get up and walk out. So, I can kind of see some of their faces when I'm like, that is anti-Palestinian propaganda. They're like, oh crap, or just saying the word intifada, which, has been deemed as like a hate slur. And I even got in an argument with the girl that was a part of the overall setup, and she finally saw the show. And it was interesting to see her response to it as well. She congratulated me on the show, but it kind of put her in the frenzy of like, oh my God, like I really gotta think about these things. I think now that she put it all together, she realized how I tie Zionism to overall American imperialism. And it's not like I'm just picking out Jewish people. It's like I'm talking about an entire systematic institution of white hegemony and the people that, align themselves with that. So she was able to kind of see that. I mean, whether she would admit it to me or not, it's like she couldn't had the balls to come and spit that to my face. So it was interesting to see that. And then, my mom saw the show. She flew in to support me, and my mom is my biggest fan. So it was dope to hear her kind of be like, oh, wow, you really laid it out about capitalism, because I've never heard my beautiful bougie mama ever talk about capitalism in that way. So it was interesting to kind of see, her response, and she brought a friend with her as well. Had organizers come see it. Steph Reed came through. He loved it as somebody that's a cultural worker and, organizer as well. Had another sister that's a part of a radical Black feminist political education group. I connected with her, told her she may be dope to have on for some future discussions. So it was dope to connect with people afterwards as well. And then even the actors in the show, they all snuck, kind of to see my show, because they were like, what is this? And, to kind of talk to them about that too.
So I'm curious, really quickly. So you talked about your mom, you talked about the sister who kind of during the development of it, she had like all, and then but she watched it and might have was pushed a little bit, and your mom might have been pushed a little as well. So what are you saying that you want people to do? Not necessarily take away after the event, but like what are some ideal objectives or expectations or even wish that people would do after engaging this art?
I think for me, one of the biggest things, number one, was to plant that seed. And I, obviously my biggest dream is like everybody see the show and want to be like, hey, I want to join an organization and get involved. But I know for everybody, it's not going to be that, because I probably heard a lot of Black radical politics before I was, I guess, radicalized. But it's seeds of that I think inspire people to start to think more and more. It probably was like maybe 2 years ago, I heard stuff like Black capitalism wasn't going to save us, or maybe 3 years ago, honestly, but it wasn't until maybe a year and a half ago where I was like, what does that really mean? So I think, for some people that are kind of already at that point, especially, maybe Black people in America, that kind of, because I tackle the idea of Black excellence too, and Black identifying with Americanism and like what that really means. So, I'm just thinking of like the different topics that I speak of in the show and just hoping to spark people's brain as opposed to the way that they are thinking or the way they have been programmed to think about certain things. Even I mentioned Dr. King and some of his radicalness in some elements. So even I think just reshaping that. Now, I think, like I said, everybody's different. So I know my mom is going to be like, okay, well, now I'm going to join your org now, Cherie. But in the same breath, I think I wanted somebody like her to like, if you're not going to necessarily be how I am or do things how I do them, at least understand why people do this. Like there's thoughts behind this, there's research behind this, there's scholarship behind this, there's work behind this. And I am a continuation of that. You know, it's not like I'm just waking up one morning and just coming to things on my own, you know, that this is, you know, this is a evolution of stuff that has always, you know, existed. So I think I wanted for her to be kind of able to, somebody like her to be able to put those pieces together of like, you know, because I think she'd just be like, oh, well, Cherie's activist and I've seen her at March, but I guess I wanted people to kind of see there's a whole bigger picture to this element. Yeah, but overall, I do think, yeah, just to spark those things where it may not be tomorrow, but maybe 5 years from now, you'd be like that weird communist girl at that solo show, you know. I feel like she was on to something, maybe. But yeah, and then if somebody, I don't know if somebody else wanted to ask something or if I could answer the other side of this.
You can continue.
Yeah, and then I was just gonna say for me personally, I know we don't have that much time left, but it was just a big deal for me because this is the happiest I feel like I've ever been in my life as an artist. Really, because I think I don't know, but I've just been through a lot, you know. There's a lot of programming I think that we put into young artists and what that means, and I put so much pressure on my artistry my entire life of like, it has to be the thing that's going to save my family from like, you know, the people that are in poverty or whatever in my family, or it's going to be, you know, I have to become this big star. And every single thing I did, even though I was creating my own work before I was radicalized, it still was with the intention that like somebody is going to see this and like make me this big star. And it was just so liberating to be able to perform and that not be the goal. You know, like I've never been able to perform without that sort of expectation, you know, of somebody, some agent, some director has to see me in the audience and then they'll, you know, get me out of this life that I live. And it was just like, you know, wow, I really get to just perform and not worry about like, is this going to pay my bills? Am I going to be able to survive off of this, all these other things? And it just, I don't know, it was just like a breath of fresh air to be able to perform and still have this pressure of like wanting people to understand your message and hoping that your message lands in a certain way. But I think, yeah, it was just quite liberating to perform without the expectation of fame and fortune, because I think, you know, artists will tell you up and down how much they would do it. They do for free. And for the most part, we do. But there's this weighing pressure on our head of like, if I don't make this a fame, fortune, business venture, then like, I'm not really what I say I am. So that was just beautiful. And I do look forward to just being able to get, you know, to bring people together, especially with this Atlanta production. I have to get ready to, you know, really kind of plan this out, you know, with CMB in Atlanta and figure out how to make this more of a community event and a situation where we can have a talk back more. Because, I mean, that was the thing I couldn't do in New York because it was a festival. I couldn't really, you know, I spoke with people after the show, but I couldn't speak with people like on a panel and ask questions that people were pondering about more. So that's something that I hope to have, and hope to have the org present if people want to like get involved right then and there. But yeah, I definitely see it as a way to really bridge the gap between you know, people that, you know, may not be hip to Black radical politics and organizing, and the people that are. So yeah.
So before we transition to our next topic, I'd just like to salute you for what you just shared. It's moving, it touched me, very relatable as an author. In that space, the pressure, you named it. You know, we live in a country where the opportunity to auction off ourselves, our work for exchange, the ability to live out our dreams of you know, moving our family forward, ourselves, is there. You know, so I know what that feels like, especially when you have something as powerful and moving to yourself that has value. So I will, like our last conversation that we was talking with Dr. CBS, and we kind of talked about like the Black radical tradition, and hearing you and just the totality of like you're like a social butterfly, but today I see a different excitement. I see a different Cherie, which I'm excited and happy to hear. But you're walking in the steps of the Black arts movement, of that radical tradition. So I just want to acknowledge that and salute you for that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think that's dope. Again, congratulations on that. Even as you was thinking, I'm like, even most of the artists that we like, a Paul Robeson and all these other people, a lot of them didn't start out radical. It was that moment, and then that was that building up. And I'm sure they was like, oh, I want everything to be right now. And it's kind of like, no, you have to, as the Bible says, wait on your ministry.
Ooh, you call it the Bible. Wow.
Yeah, man, amen, brother.
Back.
Hey,
Speaking of Bible,
a
y'all
lot of
put some money in
liberation.
our collection pay. You know what I mean? Pass the thing around. You know, so we can buy a pack and sell it. No, I'm joking. No, listen, we really appreciate you sharing that. And before we get into our topic, we want y'all to take a quick break. When you take this break, you can probably write a grant, roll a blunt, or whatever you need to do, but come back ready to talk about the nonprofit industrial complex. And let's see how we get down. So be right back.
I'm throwing copper at the coppers, but I'm shaking like Morocco. Say my prayers with the pistol, serve the sinners with the chopper. All my buddies got it from scratch. My house had Betty Crocker. His mama owned D. He ain't even get no shot up. Profit is invisible. Profit come from product. He thinking buffet. He can't comprehend no potluck. God bless the child with his own powder to rock.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. Yeah, so I guess we're gonna get into this topic now about the nonprofit industrial complex, and it comes to the revolution not being funded. Yeah, I guess I'll kind of just open this up with maybe like a question that I think I had yesterday with the PE that I led for CMB, because we've been talking a lot about mutual aid. So I think this is right on brand. But yeah, one of my questions is what is like the main difference between, or yeah, I guess maybe you guys can just answer for yourself, but like, what's the main difference between a nonprofit organization that's just tied to businesses in the system and neoliberalism versus a radical approach to the nonprofit industrial system? And is that really possible?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great question. As Malcolm X said, history is the basis of rewarding us with the necessary understanding. So when we look at King and SCLC, SNCC, and a few other organizations, they was nonprofits, or they had that component. It had radical politics. They was more governed by a grassroots initiative, a freedom struggle. Obvious, some of the money went towards individual salaries, programs, initiatives. I think those things was totally out front. It wasn't totally dependent on that capital. They understood capital was necessary, but it didn't compromise them. There was a compromise because, again, a lot of money that was able to generate was from outside of our own communities, so particularly white communities, and also the grants. And that's always a contradiction or a critique, but it's necessary. But now, when you fast forward it, in my strong opinion, the nonprofit industrial complex has become the leader in how we organize, and it's principally because of the money that is associated with the opportunity to hire organizers. And I don't necessarily see that as an evil. I think we have not become sophisticated enough in being open to the heart of your question. Those who pay us cannot help free us either, right? And we get confused on that component. I think the Black Lives Matter have clearly defined for this era the flawedness and the mishap, and totally depending, putting our eggs in that basket. So, as a Conrad here says, it's social warfare, and it's like individualism is so connected to Americanism that it's a drug, it's an addiction. And that's part of the nonprofit industrial complex, that we don't have the right politics in command of governing. Because again, as I've been saying recently, there's our political consciousness, and then there's our political reality. So our political reality is maybe you have a job, you're doing this and that. Your political consciousness, communism, revolution, etc. And where we fool ourselves in the nonprofit industrial complex, we've merged those two together. without clearly understanding the demarcation of the difference.
Yeah, I think that was excellently put. And honestly, as I think about like the 2 years ago at that Black Radical conference that CMV had, and Yusef was on a panels, and Yusef was in the space talking. And then also, if I would have add another person to the stage, it would have been Yusef. So when Tone, Kamal, and Hiram, and the brother from Uhuru was on the stage, like, they was carrying on some of the things that Yusuf was saying that day, and also right now. And I think one of the biggest things is understanding that, like, as a revolutionary, and as Yusuf talked about, like having a consciousness, having a politic, but then also engaging that politic and consciousness in reality is a motherfucking beast. And it seems very hard for us to do. But when we have that and we able to live in reality, we understand that sites of struggles are necessary and on all fronts, right? And I think all of our ancestors, our revolutionary ancestors, says fight on all sites of struggle that is obviously possible. So whether it's electoral politics, whether it's a nonprofit, or even with the public school system, which include electoral politics, I think it's important to understand that as a revolutionary or radical, a person who are thinking about deep social change, who objective is socialism or communism or anarchism, they're not dependent on an apparatus that they know that eventually will be pulled from under them. So let's say, for instance, if your funding is a contingent upon you not pushing the envelope on who you stand for, what you support, right? So when the Palestine go up and that you will say something that's going to stop your funding, you should not have built your organization based on that funding. That should be just a tool or a resources for you to further lodge your struggle in whatever area you're organizing in. And so I think for revolutionary people who use that tool or engage in that site of struggle, it's not the end all be all. It's not the end. It's a means to an end. It's a tactic in order to get the end goal. So that's what I would add to Yusuf's statements.
Cool. Yeah, for me, I mean, I echo what you guys have been saying as well. I think I'm just always trying to, I think I struggle sometimes explaining that to people and how it's different from, that it is a different approach or a different mindset than like trying to put your money together, because I think it goes with the thought behind it is, if we know that Black people only have a certain amount of money, and we're trying to organize things that can benefit the people in need, but then turning around and then asking, like, I don't know, just for donations, like say you just were like a organization that didn't run as a nonprofit, but for whatever reason, you're just like, I'm just going to do a bunch of fundraisers or whatever and get the money on my own, or, or make it off of my business. How, it just makes more sense to, like, in this economy with what we're facing, to be able to use nonprofit as a tool, because it goes away from then depending on the actual people in the community themselves that you're trying to help to, like, put all the money in. It's like, if you can get money that doesn't require stimulations to get certain things done, then I think it makes sense. But it's hard to explain that sometimes, people that are so caught up in, it's got to be a Black person and a Black owned, business, and that's more efficient as far as getting resources, as opposed to like going the non-profit route. But I think it does come back to the myth of buying power. But I'm always thinking about like how to break that down, because it's like, if you tell people if you're telling them, this circulate the Black dollar thing doesn't work, and then you tell them that you're helping the community through a nonprofit, they're like, but what happened when this don't work? What happened when that person stopped giving y'all money here? Y'all got stimulations too. And, I'm just always trying to figure out how to, word that. But I feel like you guys kind of lay it out better.
But you're also in the right place, right? So as Yusuf, I don't think too many people can question, if anybody, his sincerity and commitment to a movement. And just as well as, we and all love him in that space, he also leads a nonprofit. So I think if anybody can explain it or try to like lay it out, the contradictions is also. I mean, I think Yusef can do that. I think we've been talking about that for maybe last 2 years, and even as we think about how we struggle with the work in CNB around the country, Yusef, I'm curious how you would, if you're speaking to people, many people like Cherie, and they're like grappling with that, like how would you help them understand the utility, but also the contradictions?
I mean, one, first naming that most of us decide to want to go on a nonprofit route is for money. Because we see, or I see Geechee, I see Cherie who got a grant, like shit, I can get a grant. But we use the disguise of I want to help my community. I want to help young people. So this is the means. And we mean well, but we're not honest with ourselves. We want access to the money, but then when you get into it and you talk to people who give the money, the big money, they'll tell you have to be a nonprofit that has been in business for at least 5 years. More important, you have to have an account that's circulating enough money to show that you're a functioning business. You just can't pop up a nonprofit tomorrow, have a mission statement, and got a couple hundred people and think you're about to get a $1 million check. It doesn't work like that. That's why we have in any given city close to 2,000 nonprofits, and where we're ultimately competing with each other. And so most people are confusing that. And so, like for me, now that I'm executive director of a nonprofit, that was never my goal. It was never a desire of mine. To Geechee's point earlier about electoral politics, that is a great analogy. It's very similar. So for me, it's challenging myself to be balanced and how to engage on behalf of the community and the people that I say I want to represent. Because ultimately, we can close ourselves off to being one way, and we don't, when we're not growing. But then it's scary, kind of like you talking about, Cherie, with your experience of the pressure. There's a pressure of, because you're no longer with the people per se. And even that's very tricky, because Black people, and poor people and oppressed people, we're everywhere, but the mentality may be different and the interests may be different. So it always goes back to values and things of that nature. And I'll just conclude on this. I remember recently I met with an Arab guy. He's a millionaire. He supported our organization, so he thought he was like, "Yeah, I like you, Yusef, but you're a fighter." And mind you, he's Muslim, right? And he's like, "I'm not a fighter." I'm like, and that's a contradiction in itself. To be a Muslim means to be a fighter in the sense of your beliefs demands of you to fight, because it says in the Quran that oppression is worse than slaughter. So that right there says you should be a fighter. But he was trying to be very manipulative to me and thinking that he was going to rub up to me and think that I would just go for anything. And obviously, I couldn't just tell him in my normal way, like, "Fuck you, you full of shit, kiss my black ass." I had to tell him in a very nice and polite way, but nevertheless, the message got across. So and that's the challenge, like of me, because I remember I was talking to somebody recently, like, "Man, I need to pull out my machete and just start cutting motherfucking." He was like, "Yusef, your machete didn't get you here." I'm like, "Damn, you're right." And that's the contradiction that we wrestle with. And again, I'm not opposed to nonprofit. What I'm opposed to is that we put all our eggs in the nonprofit and we get confused about how we utilize the nonprofit that ultimately undermines our grassroots revolutionary radical movement.
So there's something that I did want to get to some of the things in the conversations in the chat and some of the questions in the chat. So I think it's rather pertinent to kind of pull this up first. So as Yusef has said before, in terms of taking us through the history of politics as it relates to the nonprofit, revolutionary radical orgs, and how nonprofit maybe co-op or even what's doing the cleanup job for what COINTELPRO couldn't do. There's this conversation around, and what I actually, I'm gonna pull a link up first, but what I thought about when I think about this link is like sometimes our enemies kind of describe or present how stupid they actually are. But this idea of like the goal is the nonprofits versus socialism, right? So is it possible, or how do y'all think the state and or corporation or capital utilize the nonprofits to delegitimize and or erase people's minds about socialism? I remember writing a post talking about how social workers will do everything except advocate for socialism. And so I wonder again, when you think about the capitalist production, mode of production, capitalist social values, Yusuf, when you say like even the radical people, like the reason why you go into nonprofits to get money, like I'm curious how y'all think about like nonprofit capitalism and socialism, if there's any connections in your mind, and then obviously people in the chat you can share as well. But I'm definitely curious about hearing how y'all think through that.
Only Geechee will ask a question like this. You want to go? You got a response, Cherie?
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking about that, and I there was this one. I set in on this nonprofit thing for like grants a little while ago when I was thinking about eventually trying to raise money, to take my show different places and stuff like that. And so she was talking to artists about how to utilize nonprofits. And she kind of just made me think, even about how orgs utilize, grants really is what it was for grants. So it made me think about how nonprofits utilize grants. And I don't know her politics, but the way she kind of laid it out was like, it's kind of like all the extra money that they have to create these nonprofits and keep this nonprofit thing going. If it was utilized as socialism or utilized as socialist policy, then it would be a way towards socialism. I don't know if that, but the way she kind of basically said, she was like, this isn't, you shouldn't, because she was saying it's not a shame thing. Like, this is the money that should go to the people or your government or everything. It should go to you. So basically she was saying, don't feel ashamed as an artist to like take advantage of these things that, the way the system is set up, only a few amount of people are going to have money to like do certain things or whatever. And like you as an artist, you shouldn't feel ashamed for applying for grants for this money. Basically, like this money belongs to you as the person. It's not a handout. It's not a this. There's no shame in it. But I think, I don't know. I understand systematically how it keeps the capitalist system going. But then I'm just saying mentally, if you can kind of break down like to people that like, they put it as a nonprofit to keep capitalism going. But if you take away the nonprofit name, like, and just was like the money is for everyone to share. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. So I think sometimes, yeah, even though it is keeping that system going, I do wonder, to me, even with nonprofits existing or having this extra disposable income to just give to people for grants, I do think kind of shows that like, socialism could function or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I think, yeah, that's sometimes what I think about it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Yusuf.
No, I think we have to remind ourselves we live in a country that made socialism and communism the antichrist, right? And I think also nonprofit is a form of business. Let's understand that you can get a tax write-off for the work that you do, but more importantly, it's also there's a charity aspect to it, and there's a social justice aspect. So so from that standpoint, it's the closest thing imaginable possibly to socialism in this country. It's not socialism by no means, but because of some of the operations of it, in particular, we live in a country where white hegemony is so strong and capitalism so strong that on the spectrum, it looks like socialism, right? But it's not socialism by no means. And that's the manipulation game that they play. But also, it has undermined our ability to not because it shouldn't be an either or. It should be a both and. As Geechee mentioned in one of the other segments today, that we have to exhaust every means of struggle to be able to organize I think our problem is that we are not sophisticated enough to be able to organize, to understand these different platforms and how we use them. Because when you look about nonprofit and how it operates, it has taken all the evils that has operated in our movements and exist over there. The male chauvinism exists over there. The picking up, appointing leaders and things that, like, I haven't publicly said this, and probably my first time saying it because I'm still rational on how to talk about it. But if Black Lives Matter was ran by me and Geechee, and we got $90 million in it, and Geechee bought a house in South Carolina, I'm up in Detroit doing my best thing, we both would be under the prison. We will be crucified, right? And I'm not trying to get into gender wars by no means, but just clearly how things operate and how sophisticated oppression plays us against each other, and then visibly within the nonprofit industrial complex. And one of the things it does, because to your point, Cherie, around a grant. So again, if the Shakur Foundation says, I'm going to give you guys a grant, but this is your restriction. Now you gotta operate up under my rules to be able to get that money, and it derails so many of us, and it's exhausting. I mean, a friend of mine I was just talking to the other day, and she was reminding me when they first started organizing their organization, it was mothers. They would bring the kids, and it was just doing the damn thing. But then when you get in the bureaucracy of it, you get away from those fundamental things of just, let's pull our money together, pull our resources together. And because that's the energy, that's the real grind.
In my mind, as I remember insights, the revolution will not be funded, and in the link there's in the description there's a link to a discussion or recorded lecture that I have, like not for profit but still exploited. And I used to go around Baltimore and DC and do this for nonprofits, but as I remember, like the robber barons, like the Ford, the Carnegie, and Rockefeller, and kind of like the start. And Amos actually talked about this a lot in Blueprint for Black Power Policy Formation chapter. But there were the capitalists who was pretty much, enslaving people, taking money, resources, and people, and building up so much capital. And as labor started to get his reign, right, there was. And I could be making this up, but there could be the white capitalists, their white wives who were the charity people who wasn't getting paid to kind of help out. And the white capitalists saw not only the U.S. government and this charity thing as a vehicle to put a fraction of their blood money into the hands of the buffer class in service of the victims, to wash their hands of blood. So can that fraction actually support social programs to help the people? No, because there's so much more money that has been stolen that if you fill up the coffers of social programs, that's what should be done, because that's what the capital comes from. The capital comes from the people that's working, right? And so I wouldn't even ask to be like, okay, move the nonprofit people out the way and then give the people that fraction. No, like the fraction is theft. And they only did that because when they put that little fraction aside, they drew up the laws that allowed them to get tax breaks and also pacify the dissension of like labor that's about to tear their ass up, including white and black labor. So I think even underfunded social programs is not feasible, right? So even if we move those buffer people out the way and give that money direct to the people, because I remember saying that too, but I'm like, when you do the numbers, when you do the math don't be math. That still ain't enough money. Now just so happened, even though it's not enough money, most of that money is getting spent in the $100,000, $90,000 salaries of people, and then when they take it to the community, they get a $25 gift card and some financial literacy. Even though that's fucked up, all of the money still is not enough anyway, right? So that's kind of how I think about it. But go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, even it may not be enough, but I'm saying what is the plan, and also what is the interest of the individual, and the interest of the individual where they become Black excellence. They see themselves as, how Huey was deemed the supreme commander. People are not using that language, but they're functioning as pharaohs. Remember, and I've heard this twice from two different individuals, where are you doing the work because it's about you, or are you doing the work because it's about the people? And that's a question that we had to always keep come back, asking ourselves. And if it's about the people, can you walk away and take a vacation? Can you not get up tomorrow and do that? Is there someone else to do it? But we trained ourselves to say the people need us, but in reality, we're feeding our egos. And that's what the nonprofit industrial complex does, is getting that exceptionalism. Yusef, you're so wonderful. You're so great. Let me give you this. And if I don't have the right value system, I don't have the right support system, it's easy to fall into that, right? And this is where Quasi has always challenged me. Again, we do the backpack event, we do the free the people, and all these feel good things. But what are they? What is that attached to bringing people in, to organizing them? And if we're not, we're just another charity organization. But then that's the contradiction, because also we want to address the materials conditions, but are we address them in a revolutionary way?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think it's always thinking about, the revolutionary approach. Yeah, I definitely know that like the nonprofit stuff is, I'm just trying to figure out like how to explain it to a person who doesn't understand a revolutionary approach to nonprofit, or somebody who would just look at it like, oh, well, you're depending on charity when you could just start your own business or whatever. And, and so that's one of the things that I think I just try to think about, was like, even this nonprofit money, we definitely, the money that we make as workers is definitely more, and we are owed more, and we would get more in a socialist setup. But the whatever that negative percent is or whatever, I feel like people will look at it, like I said, like, oh, a dependency, or like it's not yours. You would be more just if you just worked for the money yourself. That's people will try to describe it. If you worked for the money, started your own business, and got that money yourself, that's more legit than having your nonprofit. But I and that's why I try to explain it, like that money is really the from the money that these rich people are, that small, that's still money that we helped make. We just have to go through all these crazy grants and processes to get that money. So I think that's more so where I was coming from with that explanation. But yeah, I understand what you mean, where it's like, it's definitely not socialism or necessarily ours. But I think, like I said, to kind of differentiate it, as opposed to person, it's like, well, you need to just get it on your own if that's what you want to do. But yeah, I don't. Yeah.
So you two, including Quasi, and then also Musa, who's in Atlanta, just made me think of a teaching or event or something that we have to do, because the argument or the back and forth or the struggle that Quasi and Yusef is having answers your question, Cherie, in a time where you're actually studying mutual aid. So, for instance, if this is true, which it is, which Musa put up, nonprofits fill a charity social safety net function that was gutted by austerity. That is very true. But if this is true, then the Quasi and Yusef argument is Quasi is trying to push Yusef, or vice versa, or they're having a conversation around how can we take this thing that was developed as charity and turn it into actual mutual aid, right? So when Yusef say, yes, take that money, feed the people, meet some of their needs, but also turn it into mutual aid, which means pull the people into the struggle. So if you're tactically doing that, that's something different. So Yusef, I'm putting you and Quasi to work, and I'm going to try to bring in Musa. But when we finish this book as a chapter, I'm going to need y'all, if we got to do a virtual panel or come panel or whatever, I think that would be a great nightcap or capstone, maybe one of the two, I don't know, for us studying that book, because I feel like what you said there was important. Like, and even as we got programs, right? When you think about having programs and trying to build out mutual aid, when you look at the radical orgs, some might have their money tied up in salaries, but then there's some people who don't have a lot of money, and then there's some people who have a lot of money, and those people who have a lot of money, they're more likely to have programs, paying people bills, paying these whatever. But even when you have the programs, if you don't turn it into mutual aid programs, then it's just going to be charity. So it's like, I don't know. I think there's a good conversation going there that would probably be.
I feel you. When you chance, Latif has a good thing to pull up, but
Okay.
also all right. So let's dig, and this is no shade against anybody, right? So we have a lot of folks who are in the nonprofits who are making, nice money, right? Who may consider themselves socialists, communists, and etc. And it makes you question: are you how much of a socialist are you, right? If you're, and again, it's not I'm not opposition of you make the salary you got, but are you using this? Is there other ways also to use the salary? And again, it's something I wrestle with, right? And the salary that I have and the things that I do to appease my own conscience. I mean, you guys know me. I give you the shirt off my back, and so and then for the balance off of me is where I run a partnership with a Mama Cool Community House. We don't get a grant. I pay out my own pocket every month to pay those bills to keep that house running on behalf of the community and numerous other things. And there's other people may do that, but like that's something that again we have to. That's the part of that individualism that sinks in. And again, and who can't or who won't fall victim to being to your political reality at some point? Like who doesn't want to? I remember when I first got a brand new car at the lot, right? I drove Hootie so much, man. My name was Hootie, right? But when I drove that one car at the lot, I went, oh, this what that's like? Oh, this what this feels like, the car not to break down on you and shit and get you to point L&A. And again, the brother just used a quote of safety. That was a safety as a man that I felt comfortable with, right? And it's not a crime to want to live okay, but again, it's just we don't have enough of these conversations to explore these things with ourselves. Like again, going back to Cherie, like that, there's different levels of vulnerability that we're experiencing in our bodies and our social experiences that we're not talking about, and we're not strong enough as individuals to defeat capitalism and white hegemony on their terms by our individual selves.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Geechee, did you? I can't remember who was the last. My bad.
No, you can go ahead, but I was trying to Yusef, tell me about that comment you want to pull up. I missed it, but go ahead. Cherie, you had a response.
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm always thinking about that as somebody that is an organizer in a nonprofit, and there's people that obviously are like, given an incentive and not. And me, I just fully volunteer because I have a full-time, well-paying job and stuff like that. And so I'm always thinking like, the cost of, them being, paid by a nonprofit or whatever, and me not. And I do kind of always think that regardless, I think I always come to the conclusion of like, regardless, you still can end up, if you're not strong in your politics, that it does, as far as the work that you're doing in the community, if it gets to a certain point, you all run that risk. Like whether you're in a nonprofit where it's like, the person that may give you money or people over the nonprofit may eventually not want you to do something that that is just or whatever for the community. So you may lose whatever, if you're kicked out the nonprofit, you can't support yourself, like that's, a thing to battle. But then I think it's the same thing, even if you're not tied to a nonprofit, like I still work for a capitalist employee. So it's like, if I, get arrested and my face is on the news because I was at this Antifada thing or whatever, like, like I most likely won't be able to keep my job. So it's like, you still run this risk in a capitalist system on both ends. I do think they are two, different struggles, but there still is that same thing of like, if you're doing the work that, you're supposed to be doing and you do become a threat to the state in some circumstance, either your nonprofit is going to start losing its money, you may struggle with your livelihood, or even if you work a job, like, whatever you do, it may, get too much to the forefront where you may lose the job. So I do think that is the risk on both ends when you're doing this sort of work, in a capitalist system. So I think about that often too. Yeah, so it's a slippery slope.
Yeah. So also, I think people having resources, they deserve the resources, and then everybody else also deserve the resources. So I don't know that it's always necessary to feel bad for getting amount of resources, because more than likely you deserve that and more, and you getting that wouldn't stop other people from getting what they need. What will stop other people from getting what they need is the motherfucker who control the foundation and who had the resources to give his little fraction to the foundation. So I think, yes, just as well as we need to take care of people's material needs, and as Yusef say, now with the resources that you get, how you move it around and how you help people, that's on you, and it should be in a more communal, collective way. But again, I think there's a time for some struggle. But I want to share a couple of the comments, starting with Latif. I'm not an organizer. Radicalization is still loading. However, it seems that organizations have to operate within the system they are created under. Just a thought. So before I would answer, I would just gain clarity on what does that mean. Like they have to operate within the system they are created under. I don't know if that means they would have to capitulate and agree with, or as Yusef said, they would have to take their consciousness and politicization and engage in reality, but also struggle to do something different. Because you can't be a revolutionary unless you have a system that you're against, that you want to change. So yes, you are under the system. So I'm just not sure, and maybe y'all can tell me what y'all read, what that means is that you have to operate within the system. So
yeah. My understanding is the second part of your point. I mean, the fact that we're in America, so we operate up under the system by default. And I think, again, your continued use of the comparison to electoral politics. Again, I'm against elections, but the everyday person is involved in them in some way. So as a revolutionary, you have to, if you're saying the people is the folks you are advocating, then we have to get off our high horse, off our arrogance, and engage the people. But engaging the people, we have to struggle with them to create a plan. It's how, because with Fred and the party you saw, it's like, we got to heighten the contradiction. We can't heighten the contradiction on the sideline. We have to be involved to heighten those contradictions. Because if you and I was always on the sideline saying, I told you so, I told you so, they going to man, get the hell on out of here. You just a heckler. And I know you hear it because I've heard it.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. Cherie, you got any response? I was going to get to more of the questions, and I know we coming to an end, and it looks like, again, Yusef did it again. This is a very important topic that obviously we can't get done in one setting. There's a lot of dope shit that's happening in the chat, so it seems like it needs to be an ongoing conversation. And I'm actually not joking when I say that Yusef and Musa is gonna, culminate our study on mutual aid, and maybe we'll do some type of event. But I think this conversation needs to keep going. But there was something that was said at the beginning, and it happened really fast, and I didn't want to leave it because I'm like, we should probably grapple with that. Like, left a nonprofit, now I work with the school district, much happier. Now, at first reading it, you might have a knee-jerk reaction, but then as I think about it and read it a couple times in my head, I'm like, something makes a little bit more sense. So what came to mind, or what comes to mind when you see that? What's your response or reaction when you read what is said there?
I mean, I think, yeah, at first it is like, well, what does that have to do? One have to do with the other. But then I think the more I think about myself too, and my personal experience is, I think the same way I approach my art, right? And how that's changed, where I wanted to make a living through this work that I thought that was so important, but I also wanted to make a living through it. And it got complicated trying to do both, you know, especially once I was radicalized, I realized, well, dang, I may not ever be able to make a living through this, because I mean, they've been telling people in Hollywood you can't even say anything pro-Palestinian or else you're blacklisted or whatever. So it's like, okay, I probably won't make it as this big star or whatever, but I think that's the same thing where it's like, now she works in the school district, and it's the same thing for me. Like, I have this tech job that I am able to make a living from. It has nothing to do with revolutionary art or organizing, but I'm doing the thing to live, and it's separate from the work that I actually want to like do in the world or whatever. And I think maybe that's more so, because it definitely allows me a peace of mind to be like, when I'm doing the capitalist work and my capitalist job, that is what it is. And then everything else I do does not depend on my overall survival, whether it be my art or my organizing work. So I do think there is a mental freedom when it comes to that.
Okay. What you got?
So it could also read as, I left the school district and I work for a nonprofit. It all depends on the individual. It all depends on the environment. Again, the T brings up some great questions and some good points, because ultimately it's still up under the same system. It's just a different dynamic of that system. I haven't worked in the school district per se, but I worked at as a Head Start teacher, which is a nonprofit, which was kind of like a hybrid of both. And in both environments are centered around engaging and serving people, but there's so much bureaucracy and university in both those work environments that it undermines the ability to be effective in the way that we would like. So I think and it also, again, it goes back to as an individual, like individually, and sometimes we can't neglect ourselves as an individual, but are we position ourselves as an individual to also function within the collective?
So here's what happened to me. And so school district, public dollars, public setting, nonprofit, as we say, robber barons, capitalists throw a fraction at it in a private setting, and you have to compete for funding that you normally don't get. There are private schools and there's public schools. White people pull their kids out there and they've taken the private school, and the public school is left to, and I'm saying that in a perfect world, but the public school is left to tax dollars being directed there, and the people who engage get to direct the experience for the kids. So what I think I heard was, in some shiny town where there's a bunch of private schools and all the rich elite kids go there, and their white folks are funding their own stuff, and they're like, that tax dollars, forget it. And it's going into this school, and this person is working at a school, and they have way more flexibility and freedom to do particular things, and they can, as someone said, they can be themselves in that space. So I wonder if it was saying like, there's a particular type of fight or struggle you have in the public domain that you not necessarily have in a private domain. And so I wonder if that's what that person is saying. And I don't know if that makes sense, because that goes to the point of like that particular struggle in the electoral arena, right? To count forces, to put your politics out there, but also to get tactical wins, non-reformist reforms. You do that in the public domain more so than you could do it in the private. So I wonder if in a particular school district somewhere in this damn world or in the US, it's a safe space. I don't know. But
I don't think there's never that word really bothers me. I don't think there's no such thing of a safe space. Because again, when we think of safety, it comes out of the ability to advocate for yourself, right? I mean, we've had some touchy conversations, and without those touchy conversations, we don't get to overstanding. It's how do at the end, like it may feel like Geechee and Yusef about to knuckle up, but man, my bad, or misunderstood, but it brought forth an understanding, and that's the courageousness of, or the courage to be able to hold ourselves. And for me, whether I'm working in a nonprofit, not a nonprofit, school district, I'm going to wear a Malcolm X shirt. I am going to be Yusef, Bunchy, Shakur. And things. I'm not going to walk in that motherfucker butt booty naked, but I know how to be myself. And I think as Black people, New African people, we still struggle with that. And that's the like, that's not a compliment I try to get, but that's the compliment I get from so many people, because they're unsure of themselves. I mean, like Cherie talked about her artwork, right? And that art of being unsure of that, right? And that's natural, because again, the previous conversation, Geechee, about we're under America, right? And so being under America, we're always being scrutinized because Black is such a level of anti-Blackness. Like, I remember working at Head Start. I had my long, beautiful locks, and I'm off for the summer. I cut my hair and I come back, and people are like, "Oh, you look so amazing now. You look so wonderful. You don't look so evil." I'm like, "What the fuck? Like, damn, y'all thought I was the boogeyman or some shit?" But this is, again, and this is all from Black folks. That these negative stereotypes and stigmas that they had of me and things. And so this is where, like, we're always fighting or struggling in our relationships, in our bedroom, at the grocery store, in the bathroom, in some form of fashion of maintaining our sanity. But it's only in the nonprofit. Not only, but it's in the nonprofit that it really exemplifies itself, because it fools ourselves in a way that we think that we're on the fast track to liberation. So, like, me as executive director, I'm very careful about using those language. Like, this is not a liberation movement. This is not a revolutionary movement. We can be radical, but this is not what this space is. And by putting power back in the community, that's a revolutionary act. That is a liberation act. That is the tool that I want to use my power at this nonprofit to understand our place, our privilege, to be able to stand in the crux on behalf of the people and serve the people as a tool from them.
Yeah, that's definitely like a thing too, with the safe space thing, that I think, and I guess, I think I've heard people that are more radical use, but I think I hear a lot more liberal people, here, but that's like a real thing, what you're describing. Like, even this girl, because I work remote, but they flew us out last month as well I went to Chicago. Well, really, this was May. I went to Chicago before I went to New York to work in the office for like 3 days. It's so dumb. But there's a Black girl that works in the office, and we always hang out because we're like the only 2 Black girls. Like, really, there's like this one older Black lady, but other than that, it's like white people, maybe some other ethnicities, were the only 2 Black girls. And like, she had her natural hair out or whatever. She was like, "Oh my gosh, girl, this is the first day I wore my natural hair out, and I've been just getting all these crazy responses. And I'm so happy you're here because I've been feeling so insecure or whatever about wearing my natural hair out." And I was just like, oh, wow. Like, people are still like literally scared to like wear their natural hair to work or whatever. And like, she was like, yeah, people are just like, oh my gosh, like, how did your hair get like that? She's like, I didn't press it out. What you don't understand is I was straightening my hair to make it look a certain way or whatever. But yeah, but she see me roll up my locks with it. I'm like, girl, yeah, I had, an afro when I came in, and then I got locks, and it's just been like what it is. But even that, like, and the people on my team are like 4 close white boys or whatever, and they're like, oh, so you can't take the locks out? And I'm like, yeah, it's locked, but it just be stuff like that I feel like, people will, that's why I think so much neoliberalism, kind of works in a way so much, because people will literally look at these strides. If I can wear my hair, I can do this. And it kind of seeks into the radical spaces as well, when it comes to working in these nonprofits, where it's like, I get to talk about the things I do every day. So it tricks people into feeling like, okay, like I'm free in a sense, even though they know are in a nonprofit to do the revolutionary work. They're just like, I'm just happy to be in this safe space where I can talk about leftist politics with people, and it gets, it kind of sometimes can get people not as focused on the work, because they're like, I'm just happy to be with people that think like me, which you should be. But I think, there's always the action. I like how you broke it down of like, we're taking a radical approach to the nonprofit org, but the work that we actually do with the people is the revolutionary work. Yeah.
So I know we are towards the end. I want to see if we can kind of get some reflections on the first part of the conversation: art, cultural worker. And honestly, I mean, I think it merged right into a nonprofit. Like, in a fairly decent way in terms of, again, using tools and using sites of struggle. So yeah, I just want some reflections that y'all have from the two conversations as we wrap.
Again, I mean, I'm totally moved by Cherie's comments and the personal experience and ability to be vulnerable and share that. Like I said, I can relate. I've written 3 books, working on a new book. Um, I have some plays in my head that I want to do. So a lot of similar things, and to be quite honest, like my books, I think they're bestsellers, right? I think they should be bestsellers, and obviously, living in America, there's some financial gains that could come from that could change, be a game changer in a lot of ways, right? And so you're not alone. I share that same pressure, and I try to wrestle with that. And the way I've ended up on is like there's the rabbit and the turtle, and the rabbit moves a lot faster. And the turtle may not move as faster, but it does it the right way. Not say the rabbit doesn't do it the right way, but in terms of because it just moves slow. And I've accepted being a turtle. I've slept at this. Everybody doesn't move at the same pace, but also hearing what you said, it spoke to me and reconfirmed that what I'm doing is right. Because again, we're human. Like we want gratitude. We want pat on the backs and all those little things sometimes, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just how do you manage it. And so hearing you, it's like you was you was in part of me that I don't talk about publicly enough. And so I appreciate you uh, representing me in that way of your personal struggle. So thank you.
Cherie, go ahead.
Yeah, again, it was dope to be able to share with you guys and on this platform because I was sorry because I was like, oh, I want to I can't wait to share this and how I'm gonna build from this and talk about this experience because like I said and then having Musa in the chat, it was really that article that Geechee shared to me from Musa that really kind of like lit a fire in me, really pissed me off at first. I'm be honest. Geechee can get the testimony, but really pissed me off at first. But it all kind of came full circle, like being on that stage and being able to just like like I said, kick ass, but like have it be for like a real intentional purpose other than like I'm just trying to get on or whatever. And yeah, like I said, it was very liberating. So I'm glad, and there's so much more I could even share about that experience. Even what I was about to say, sorry, I got distracted. But yeah, even when it comes to like relating it back to the work that we do, that was a compliment that I got from it was Steph. He was like, I could tell you in a political education thing, because it's just like it hits different. But yeah, I think it definitely there's that side of it. But then I really do think I want other artists to get to this point because, like I said, especially actors, is like I said, and I feel my ways about the Hollywood. Sorry, I feel my ways about the Hollywood system and everything. But I think to me, I think if once you kind of get artists to understand that in a sense, it kind of can radicalize the artists. And that's even in the dressing rooms. I'm with all the people at the festival. And I was just kind of telling them, like, there's only like 2%, 3% of actors that can like support themselves. And I know all the people in the room are like in school and they're doing this free festival pretty much, but they're still hoping that it's going to get to that point where they don't have to work their coffee shop job or whatever. And I was like, it was very interesting to see their response to me too. Like, oh, she's not trying to audition and like get on this big screen or like sell her show to this big time producer or something like that. And I think, like I said, that you're very much programmed to think that way as an art, and like there's nothing that exists outside of that. And I was like, yeah, well, I started, studying about artists in socialist countries, and I just have a different mental understanding of like my approach to my work. And they were just kind of like, huh? Is my internet? Oh, that's Geechee. Okay. But yeah, so that was interesting too, to kind of just hear these other artists, even the Paul, when I talk about Paul Robeson in the show. I had this one artist come up to me and he's like, well, you were saying he got blacklisted for being a communist. And I'm like, yeah, there's like this whole black scare thing that happened in Hollywood. Like these artists, they don't know about those things. And like, you know, I could just tell that I kind of got him thinking, yeah, I kind of got him thinking about that. Like, what do you mean? Because he heard about Paul Robeson, but he didn't hear about, you know, this, you know, Red Scare tactic to get rid of him or whatever. So yeah, I think me and Steph both were talking about pulling your how to get artists to kind of wake up and how that can kind of pull them into being radicalized as well. And then yeah, it's great because we're talking about mutual aid right now in PE, and I let the PE yesterday since Geechee was gone, and I had my questions and stuff, but most of them were just kind of approaching those contradictions of like, what's the difference between charity? What's the difference between mutual aid? What is the difference between a neoliberal nonprofit approach and a radical approach? And I think that's a question that every org has to constantly ask themselves and struggle around, you know. And I know even with CNB, like, you know, there's been a revamp this past year. So we're still working to get to that place, but I think it gives us the opportunity and advantage to understand what are we for, you know, and get clarity on that, hyper clarity on what we're for and what we're against, so that we avoid the co-optation. So I think this conversation just adds on to that. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So David, Dean Spade is the book that we are actually studying or reading. Very small, quick book. So I will send a copy to Musa if they haven't read it yet, and then also Yusef, so y'all can be prepared for our capstone. But
thank you for all the compliments, y'all. I see y'all.
Yeah, Cherie, she teared it up in the chats. So yeah, the same thing. It is the conversation. I actually remember some of the initial conversation, and it is good to. And maybe I didn't deliver it the right way all the time, because I do think I'd probably be coming sharp and coming hot. So go ahead, Yusuf. I hear you.
I'll say, can you say that one more time for the people?
Yeah. I mean, I'll be coming in hot. My bad. So, I don't know, but you know my heart. So yeah, but I think it's dope to kind of see you are actually explaining it better than I am, because you come from a real place of actually being there and then knowing it and being on the other side or whatever. And so I think that is dope as that keeps showing up. But you only made one mistake when you was like, I really want the other artists to do. Well, that's your damn job. That's why you're here now. So you're gonna have to organize the culture. I mean, the artists into culture workers. I mean,
yeah, I mean, and that's really what it's about. And I think, yeah, I mean, we'll talk more about that, but I think, you know, that's really, as far as doing this show in Atlanta and doing it under the CNB, and then being in political, and as far being in the political education committee, and then as far as like, well, I think that is kind of becoming like my overall kind of like vision, is to kind of have like an arts political education sector and kind of really get, you know, the artists radicalized. And that is my job. You're correct. Yeah. So I've, you know, I haven't fully planned it out, so maybe that's kind of why I said it very like whimsical or whatever, but that's what is all, you know, pointing towards. Yes.
Yeah, see, I'll be mellow. Right. I'll be mellow. I
came in with that action, but you know, yeah,
they be hating, man. Yusef and Geechee, I mean, I say Yusef and Cherie, they be hating. I really be coming in mellow, but they call it hot. And I mean, you know, anyway. So, and then the second conversation was again, I said I have a lecture on it, and I've been doing a lecture circuit on it. So it is a very important topic. It is something that I'm passionate about. It is something that, again, when I look at Amos Wilson's chapter in Blueprint for Black Power Policy Formation, the most impactful chapter. If you're going to read that big ass book, read chapter 9 first and then start around. But understanding the nonprofit industrial complex, reading what Insight Collective has done, will put us in a better conversation to have those things, and then in turn also put us in a better situation to actually build mutual aid. And so I can't wait till we have more of this conversation, and I also can't wait till the end of our study as Atlanta chapter. So that's all we got for today. Anything that y'all got coming up this weekend? I know 4th of July. I know it's a socialism conference or something like that. What y'all got popping this weekend?
Well, let me address this in the comments really quick. As far as Entombment, I did tell Geechee, because I know Geechee got his information, to send him the info for my show if he could make it. I mean, I had a feeling maybe not, because I know he's a busy man, has a kid and all that, but I haven't been in contact with him. But hopefully, I plan to do the show again at some point in New York. I'm really trying to do it at the People's Forum, because I'm like, if they get Amanda Steele's one-woman show at the People's Forum, like, why can't I be at the People's Forum? Like, they supposed to be for the people. So so hopefully, and I know he's in PSL, so hopefully I will eventually be able to connect with a good brother. So I just wanted to address that. And as far as this weekend, Geechee, I did share this Instagram of stuff from my show, but if you go to like my actual page, you can see I'm going to be performing on Saturday at a Break the Fourth event in Atlanta, at the Little 5 Points Community Arts Center. And it's gonna also, so this is me at my show, y'all. We supposed to show this earlier, but and then I got some other shots of me on stage if y'all wanted to like see. That's me, like and somebody got me flowers or whatever. That's me on stage. Just so people could that's me and my mama.
Hey, look at that mama.
But yeah, and so it's a lot of stuff. But yeah, I did one. That's me on stage crying. That's me and my director. Who didn't. She did. It's interesting working with her too, because I had to explain so many things to her, and I know she learned so much just working with me. Like, because we were talking one day, I was like, "But that's neoliberalism." She was like, "What is neoliberalism?" And I had to like explain certain things to her as we're working, as me and Steph, the good brother Steph. So yeah, and that's everybody that was a part of the festival and stuff. But
love it.
I was saying on my page, I have on the latest post is the Break the Fourth event that's gonna be this Saturday. So if you go to Radical Art ATL or whatever, ATL Radical Art, kind of it's on there who follow me. And yeah, so the money will be given to this freedom school that helps people that are immigrants that can't actually have access to education at this moment. So it all kind of goes towards educating them. But it's a few other radical orgs in Atlanta involved. And I'm performing like maybe 7 or 10 minutes. I'm trying to figure out what parts of the show I would perform. But I'll be there, and I'll be for people that in Atlanta that want to see a little bit of the show. Yeah.
Yusef, what you got popping off this weekend?
Oh man, chilling. It's a new book called The Pedagogy of the Black Child that I'm reading. Trying to get that done over the weekend, man. Relaxing.
That sound good, bro. You need to let me know about that one.
Okay.
Who wrote that?
Brother named David Kirkland, Dr. David.
Dr. Kirkland?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what's up, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing that. I'll be going to see my mama. My mom was hustling me, bro. She been every 2 weeks for 3-4 months. You coming on 4th of July? You come out? I said, I don't know. You coming on 4th of July? And then, yeah, so I'm gonna go. So I'm gonna see my mom and my cousins and a bunch of other people. My niece, who just got engaged. No, he a good dude. But yeah, so that's what I
put a ring on. You put a ring on.
I mean, he did. I mean, that's a little interesting love story, but yeah, so that's what I'll be getting into. And then next week, I am actually trying to organize this panel on tenant unions. We'll see if they're going to be popping off, but we'll have more shows coming on. We thank y'all for tuning in to episode 22. That's how people in Baltimore say it. 22.
Hulu. Nasty accent.
Hey man, 22. We 22, shorty. Dummy. Let me just stop playing. Yeah, but tenant unions. Yeah, we're gonna be talking about that. I've been kind of working on setting up a panel for that for some selfish reasons. We're trying to do some of that work here. But yeah, so y'all stay tuned. like, subscribe, do all them like weird things with the accounts, and I think we'll see y'all next week if the earth don't burn because of global warming, and if the revolution don't happen because Yusef over there, the nonprofits, or if Cherie don't inspire the artists to take up arms. Let me stop, because we don't advocate violence here. We just don't say peace to y'all.
Although I do talk about armed struggle in the show very unapologetically. Yes, armed struggle.
I might quit my job, man. Might try to be a model or some shit. You know?
Do to the left. Go to the left. Nah. Keep your day job. Keep your day job.
Nah. I did this modeling thing.
You don't even have a dimple, bro, and you probably do, but you hiding it with your little. You either have the dimple or what they call the bear gang, either the dimple or the bear, bro. The bear.
Ooh,
All right, man. I'll see y'all later, man.
Peace.
Bye.